Man to man, combat hand to hand, hands locked, ready for the last stand, elbow drops, kicks fade bang. If I can make you levitate, better settle mate, lights out, knocked out by the heavyweight.
Hi, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA. Today with two masters of the fight game. Firstly, Mr. Lolo Heimuli from New Zealand and Balmoral Gym, and Larry Papadopoulos from Australia and Boxing Works. How are you, gentlemen?
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Let me
just give a quick intro, just for anyone listening that's not too familiar with Lolo or Larry. Firstly, Lolo Heimuli, professional coach in kickboxing, boxing, and MMA. Fought in Muay Thai and boxing a long time ago before becoming a coach. Coached some very notable people such as Ray Sefo, Mark Hunt, Jason Vermoa, Jason Suddy, Doug Viney, amongst many others. Trained at City Liga originally with Sifu Philip Lamb. Is the founder of Balmoral Liga, coach of champions, and has a direct lineage to CKB and current UFC champs, plus many champs past and present. Jumping on to Larry from Australia and Boxing Works. Larry's one of the most accomplished coaches and martial artists in Australia. Fought in MMA, wrestling, sports jiu-jitsu and grappling, won world titles in sports jiu-jitsu, and is one of the first Australians to be ranked #1 in the world in mixed martial arts. As a coach, Larry's coached nationally, internationally, including many Australian champions, wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, sports jiu-jitsu, and other athletes in mixed martial arts. I'm in very good company anyway to discuss today's topic. So bringing us to that, before I release to you guys a little bit more, I want to discuss how to build an MMA fighter from scratch, from two of the masters. How do we go about that, gentlemen? What's the first thing? I guess as someone walks into a gym, what are the kind of attributes that you guys are looking for? I've kind of discussed this briefly with Lolo before, but Larry, what are your attributes you're looking for in a person coming into the gym?
It's very rare you get someone that has no previous experience these days, unless you're looking at building a junior up. So they usually have a background in one combat sport, whether it be wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, something like that. I think I've only had one athlete who's fighting currently, who I've had as a 15-year-old that we've brought up, but I've also sent him to cross train at other gyms. Apart from that, I've been quite fortunate that I've had people with some kind of combat sport or athletic background, and that made a great start. So there's also talent identification. I think my biggest understanding of when you want to find someone that has potential is physically and mentally. You got to break it down. Is okay. You got to look at their body type, and then you got to look at their physical capacity, strength, power, etc. What the potential in that. You can always change that. You can change a style depending on the guy's body, and you can always build someone up, make them stronger and faster and more durable, etc. But the one hardest thing, I think, is mentality. So I think we always look for someone that shows determination, great concentration and courage. If you can have someone that has those three, they're probably your best bet.
Yeah, Larry, that's a funny thing that you say that, because when Lolo and I had a talk, we talked about, the same sort of subject of someone coming into the gym, what are you looking for? And Lolo said, the talented people have come and gone. There's been some amazingly talented people come, but they don't necessarily stay. And then you have someone like Ray Sefo comes in, has that talent, but also has that discipline and focus. The first one to come to the gym, comes to the gym straight after his fights, is persistent, keeps training. This is the sort of thing that Lolo said he's looking for. Can you comment on that, Lolo?
I think Larry covered it pretty well. We just finished a little summer camp that I'm running every year during the Christmas break and holiday break. It's one of the reasons for that is just to keep the kids busy so they don't have too much time in their hand and go out and down and get mischief and so on. But I also promote it as how professional fighters do. I mean, these kids here, they just joined the gym for fitness or one reason or the other. It's not necessarily fighting, but I promote it. And just to let them know that this is how professional fighters live and train for 10 days. So we summer camp for 10 days. We would do morning training, a little bit of second conditioning, and then around lunchtime we do pad work and back work, and then afternoon we do sparring drills. Because a lot of these guys they never had any sparring, So, but as Larry said, out of those kids you can see because the training was pretty tough. It's one of probably the most challenging summer camp we ever done. And then I tried to run one every year around the same time just to keep the kids together. But you can, after the camp, you can see a lot of these kids, and we expected them. It's going to be tough, and this is why you see guys like Ray Sefo, Adesanya. This is how they live. We go in the morning, then we come back, and then we have breakfast together, and then we'll do another training session. And the next day we have only two training sessions. We go to the park and do track work, and then we have team breakfast, and just to promote that teamwork thing. But I've been very lucky that that a lot of the natural athletes walk into the gym. But I do have different classes. Most people they come in here just for their fitness or self-defense or whatever, and then I have the fighters class at different time, and then that class is I have a lot of there's a lot of we put a lot of regulations and the stuff that that to make them earn the right to be in that fighters class, and what Larry was saying, you sort of try to identify the who determined the most in training, who's the first one there, and the last one to leave after training, and who absorbed the information, and we invite them to be in a fighters class. It's not something that you got to joke the gym, you got a fighters class. No, this class is only invitation only. The first class is not a beginner's class. I don't really believe in beginner's class. I just call it a general class. But a lot of beginners they come in there one and they mix and they get shown by some of the more experienced guys. Because my view is that, and just my opinion, that a beginner's class is to make people that have less confidence being training with other people at the same, skill level. The way I look at that is if you put 30 people all just started, you just a blind man leading another blind man. So we get our guys by strength to help. And when they get better, they can help the new people coming up. So that's the system I started from the beginning. But out of those guys that we put in the fighters class, not all of them are going to be fighters. But it's a lot easier because we actually cut down the numbers, and then you can identify what Larry was talking about a lot easier because this guy made a decision to be in a fighters class. I mean, if you go back to old school, if they come late, they have to do push-ups and sit-ups, and they have to clean the gym after and all this, On a general class, none of those, so they have good time, if you're late, just make sure you have a quick warm-up. In a fighters class, I have a two personality. I have to be tough on them, and I told them, in this class here, we can be mates, but on a fighters class, it have to be tough because in the ring it's a lot tougher, but out in the fighters class, you can then identify some of the kids that stand out, and then you can almost pick out who's going to be likely to be a champion, as Larry mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Lolo, I think it's good too that it is an invitation only type of situation, right? Because then you actually have to prove your worth to get in. I know a few gyms just have a fighters class that just is a more advanced class that anyone can kind of log into and join. But if it's actually invitation only, they've, got to prove their worth and show their attributes, right?
Your podcast with Takvani the other day, he mentioned that he stuck on that class for 2 years before I even left him to be in the fighters class.
That's it.
Was about 6 months or a year,
Yeah.
Yes, I was very, very super strict.
That's good, man. Hey, Larry, jumping back to you, you mentioned about different people coming into the gym with different style bases. What would you say is the best sort of style for someone coming in to be starting MMA? Like, what would be the best base to build on?
Oh, mate, that's a tough one. I think you just realistically either a good, it's so broad, a great striking base, like a good kickboxer, boxer, and more so a great wrestler, grappler. Like BJJ is fine, but yeah, unfortunately, the world MMA champion is not the world BJJ champion. I don't think that's ever happened at this stage. So, but a lot of great MMA champions were world wrestling champions. Yeah, you got to look at the pedigree of those guys. So I'd say definitely wrestling above BJJ if you're looking at a starting base. Though I do BJJ, I'm not knocking BJJ, but you realistically, as coaches, we have to look at the statistics and the numbers. You just can't go by, we think this. It's like you look at the majority of UFC champions and look at where they've come from, their starting styles. And I think you'll find most of them either boxed or kickboxed or wrestled. Not as many. There used to be like a whole bunch of guys from Brazil when Nova and Yao ruled the roost, and they had, Jose Aldo and all those guys. There was a lot of BJJ guys there. But yeah, that was kind of a one-off thing. But you look at most of the top champions now, they have those two disciplines as their base, and they're built from there. And the obvious ones are guys like Adesanya, with his striking base, and he's built up his grappling. And I'm not really sure, like some of the other guys now in the other divisions, they're great wrestling base. How many great wrestlers have gone on to become MMA champions as well? So just those two styles.
Yeah.
It's broad.
Yeah, true. Lolo, you have any thoughts on that, man? Like the starting point for MMA fighters?
I mean, I can only comment on the strike on the strike point of view, and I think Larry said it all, and he knows more about the mixed martial art of wrestling and jiu-jitsu way more than I do. But in terms of looking for guys, number one, that they have to tell me that they want to be MMA fighters. Because we have our own BJJ fighters and wrestling coaches. So I think that's our number one key, and that will have to run and coach them. I'm not looking for any particular style of fights or any natural attribute. I'm just looking for somebody that can handle pain and more perseverance than others. And because we pride ourselves as area coaches in trying to coach them, and improve their weaknesses. I mean, like Larry said about Israel Adesanya, he's a striker, but now Vittori got him on a deep rear naked choke, and he got out of it. So the game has evolved. Back in the old days, wrestlers can only wrestle, and BJJ guys only good on the ground. But now everybody's good at almost everything, or have a lot of knowledge about. So yeah, the game has definitely changed from the last 10 years, because the last 10, 20 years ago, people who wrestle, they can't really strike. And people who strike, they can't really wrestle, but that's not the case anymore. I mean, if you look at guys like Justin Gagey, who came into the MMA as from the wrestling background, but the guy doesn't want to wrestle. He just want to stand up and bang it up. And you know, the game has changed.
That's true, man. And it kind of brings up the question that I have. Maybe Larry, you could answer. Do you think it's best for people to focus on one area, or just be a generalist, like learn everything equally, or stay with one style, like focus on that one style? What are your thoughts on it?
I'll give you a comment going back about 2,700 years. Pancration, which is what all this MMA is based on. The ancient Olympics had pancration, which was basically mixed martial arts. And they used to say the best pancration fighters were the best boxer out of all the wrestlers and the best wrestler out of all the boxers. So all you got to do is you got to outbox all the wrestlers that are in there, and you got to be out wrestle all the boxers that are in there. So it used to be a lot easier when I was fighting, because there weren't as many good grapplers in there, strikers, I should say. But now, the level of striking is just incredible, and not only one thing that people are doing as far as what you concentrate on is you just can't say, I'm going to practice Muay Thai only, or BJJ only, or wrestling only, 100%. And that's going to be enough for me. What you need to do is sometimes you can adopt a technique. You can take something straight out of Muay Thai, straight out of wrestling, BJJ, and use it. But most of the time you need to adapt the technique and say, look, that's good, but that you're vulnerable to that. But if we tweak it this way, if we do it that way, and we add this little bit here, then it works for MMA. And that's what people got to do. But you still got to create your base. I think for a fighter, like for instance, I had two really good strikers that I've trained. And again, I don't take any credit for their striking. That was Peter Graham and Ian Schaffer. And all I did was try and give them the grappling component and worked around their striking and let that, they had great coaches like Mick Spinks and, Pete trained so many great people as well. So all I had to do was fill in the holes, what was missing, for those two guys. People that I have now that, like one in particular, like I said, I'm very honest with him. I say, I can't give you this. You're going to go to another coach for that. And I'll give you my blessing to go to another boxing gym or kickboxing gym, because that's not really my real strength. And it's very rare to find a gym, and especially one coach that has all those answers. The real good gyms have got several coaches. You've got grappling coaches, striking coaches, and they all work together as a team. And as far as what you need to do, people, me as a head coach now, I give some technical points, but what I'm more into now is planning and overseeing, like taking more of a veranda view, like sit back, watch how they're going and say, well, your striking needs work here. Do you want to work with him? Or your grappling, look, you got a few holes there. I can give you a few tips, but quite often, more than often, I'll be sending them to certain people, like really good wrestling coaches or grappling coaches that I know. So that's kind of my role now.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Get that, do that oversight and just manage them. Yeah. Use your experience to manage their strengths and weaknesses. It's good.
Going back to something, sorry, quickly, that Lolo said, he said where, people putting up with pain and that. And look, people can put up with pain, but it's being uncomfortable. And what you find, most people, when they get uncomfortable, whether it's through pain, whether it's through, repetitive, where they're mentally getting stale, it's they've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's one thing that real good fighters is they've got that determination, and they just don't stop. It's just like, they keep showing up. And whereas, we find, Lolo, you've probably found so many guys, and again, that curse of talent, they look so talented, and then they get uncomfortable, and then they lose it, and they just don't have the balls to stick with it. They're just not mentally strong enough.
Yeah. Hey, Lolo, on that, what Larry's talking about, building a base and having people go to specialist coaches for certain areas. Obviously, your specialty is stand-up fighting, Muay Thai boxing, etc. Could you just talk a little bit on how you would build a foundation for someone? I know it's a very general question, but how do you build that foundation through to being proficient and good at striking?
Well, it's like, it has to, like Larry was saying, you have to learn everything, and you have to try and find that balance. But the first thing I do is I would get on prior to a camp of a new professional that we need to work with, the first thing I do is try and hook in with the wrestling or the BJJ coach and find out their view and make sure that that the style of striking suitable for the fight and marry the style of the groundwork that they come with. I hear of some horror stories where striking coach. There was one camp where they had a boxing coach, a kickboxing coach, a wrestling coach, and a lot of time back in the past where a lot of these coaches they were arguing each other which one is the best, and just I don't know. I mean, that's nothing wrong with believing that this is your style is the best, but that's not the case anymore. It's about the fighter. I'll give you an example. Striking with in MMA is different from striking in traditional boxing or kickboxing. I'll give an example. I mean, just from the boxing to kickboxing, you have to turn your toes slightly in to stop you from, to keep a center of gravity when you throw, drop your shoulder and throw power shots. You do that in the kickboxing, it'll be too late for you to leg kick because your toes in, in MMA, in Muay Thai, they tend to turn their toes out so that way they can leg better, or, if the toes already facing toward 10 o'clock. So MMA has to be slightly in between, so that way they can still shoot kicks and, and have a amount of time to leg kick or defend the half kick, So there are a lot of things, that we had to. I'm always speaking of myself as a striking coach that will to throw out the right hand or stepping over to punch the switch. You can follow through with right shoulder, take down the dam or things like that. So I try to mix up the little things that not too traditional because it's going to go from one opposite, one extreme to another. If you try and put this into a MMA fighter, I mean, the Thai fighters, they, most times they have the back foot, but 60%, 40%, so you throw that deep, that's too open for kids a good wrestler who try and take you down. So there's a lot of, you can't bring a traditional, what I'm trying to say, you can't bring a traditional Muay Thai style and try and marry that into a MMA fighter's, to take with him to a very important or hard fight against an all-round MMA opponent. So I think there's still so much to learn for us striking coaches, and probably in most cases we have to unlearn a lot of things and keep an open mind to try and find the balance, because you can't bring in traditional boxing or traditional Muay Thai and teach a fighter and mix with a good wrestler or whatever to take it in and everything sweet. That's a work out that way. The only one guy that I know that everybody knew what he's going to do. They still haven't had an answer for it, and probably won't have a chance to. Was Khabib. They knew he's going to go in there. He's going to throw some strikes, but there's an opportunity. He'll take you down. He'll mow you down, choke you out, or crown and pound. There's only one guy that everybody knew what he's going to do, and they still didn't have any answer for it. Including Conor McGregor.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. Hey, Larry, on what Lolo mentioned about stand-up styles and MMA, what are your thoughts on what's the better sort of a stand-up style that would adapt to MMA?
Oh, at this stage, boxing. I think people underestimate boxers know how to fight in a clinch, as do Muay Thai fighters, etc. So, I think the boxers, look, it's so broad. I mean, for me, it's easier with the boxing. With the Muay Thai, maybe my depth of knowledge in Muay Thai isn't enough to do that. Though Muay Thai fighters, I remember we had Krongsak Lek in the gym many years. I don't know if you were in Sydney at the time, and Krongsak was a former Thai champion, and he got in with Cookie, a Greco-Roman wrestler, and he held his own through quite a bit, like in grappling and throwing and stuff like that, using his Thai boxing skills. He just couldn't continue with the grappling because it's not as long as what happens in a fight. But yeah, for me, it's the boxing, and especially boxing footwork. So all of it's like these days MMA, it's just gone are the days where two guys just went to the center of the ring and just bashed heads. Now guys are angling and circling, they're creating angles with their strikes and creating angles to strike and shoot. So I don't know. I see more angling and more footwork in boxing. Though I'm sure there is as much in kickboxing and Muay Thai. I just think boxing has a little bit more of it. That's my opinion. I don't know if that's right or not.
Yeah. And jumping on to talking about foundations and whatnot, with you being a specialist in the ground fighting, especially and wrestling, what are your thoughts on how someone will build a base? Like any tips or any sort of general rules that you follow for building that?
I think we said it before when you interviewed me before. The reason why so many Americans are so strong at MMA, it's not because it's just wrestling. It's their what they call collegiate or their folk style wrestling. In wrestling, international wrestling, what you see in the Olympics, basically you try and take each other down. And what happens is if you slip and go down, belly down, then you don't have to do anything. You just got to stay there and stop the guy from turning you over. And after a period of time, the referee doesn't think nothing's going to happen. He'll blow the whistle and bring you up. That's a weakness. That's why that style of wrestling doesn't work for MMA. In collegiate or American style, what you see, that folk style, whether you suplex someone or whether you just trip them over, you get the same amount of points. What you get more points for is keeping the person down, or if you're underneath, getting back up on top and standing up. So you get escape points. And the reason why so many Americans have done so well at MMA is because they scramble so much better. Now, wrestlers have, the wrestling styles has changed quite a bit. There's a lot more scrambling. If you look at Russian, the Dagestani and Chechen wrestlers, their scrambles, you go onto YouTube and look for mad Russian scrambles or something like that, you will see incredible scrambling, guys getting back up off the ground. So there is that in there, but the Americans were doing it, it's part of their folk style. They learn that more. And that's why Khabib was so good, because he had that Dagestani style, whereas people that like in Australia and that do Australian style, do Olympic style wrestling in Australia or New Zealand and that, they don't scramble as well. So my hint would be, if anybody really wants to use wrestling as their base, great, learn the techniques, but then look at how the Russians scramble, how the American folk style scramble, and fight that way. Change the style to not wait for the referee to bring you up. You're going to get up no matter what. So yeah, and that's one thing with the BJJ. BJJ is fantastic, but you don't see good BJJ fighters in MMA falling to their back. You don't pull guard. Yeah,
unless you're what's that leg lock guy that just been rolling for leg locks all the time? He's hilarious. I can't think of his name. Ryan Hall. Very, very funny, this guy.
Is he fighting MMA?
You haven't seen him? I'll send you a link, man. He's doing some amazing stuff. Really off the wall.
MMA?
Yeah, okay. He's rolling for leg locks like constantly through the fight, like non-stop leg roll attacks and stuff. It's quite funny. Hey, Lolo, I'm talking about specializing in stand-up from wrestling from Larry's side. What do you think are the secret to the recent success of all the New Zealand stand-up fighters in MMA? Obviously, coming from a lineage to Balmoral Liga, but yeah, can you explain their success?
Well, I think that I agree with what Larry said about the boxing, or you should hand technique, because after all, it's only 4 ounce gloves. You don't have to load up as much power like you do on a normal 10-ounce gloves in boxing or kickboxing. But I think that it's a lot of the arsenals of lineage from Balmoral, even the kickboxing, even on kickboxing days, used to attack the leg because the leg is the closest target to opponent, even on kickboxing. And now the CKB guys, they use that a lot as their rangefinder, where in boxing people use the jab as the rangefinder. So and I think they have a lot of success. I mean, if you look at the fight between Alex Wanosky and Max Holloway, he was attacking the leg a lot. And I think that if you have the to me is the key factor of a good wrestler or somebody who's good at wrestling or jiu-jitsu is to have that plan is you got to have a good jab, and then you got to have a good leg attack, but you also have to have a good leg defense, leg kick defense or calf kick defense. If you look at the fight between Justin Gaethje and Habib, he was actually heading Habib with low kicks, and it would have been interesting if he had gone another round. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Habib as well as Gaethje, but if you look, he was heading Habib on the leg, but and I've seen some of Habib's boys now. They cover a lot of those areas that was troubling him, but yeah, it's for me is if you have to make a special weapon, the jab, like as Larry said about the boxing, but I would add the low kick attack as well as defending it. Because in the old days, if you have a good kickboxer who not very good at defending the low kicks, eventually you're going to catch them and you cross them and kill their legs, in a kickboxing fight. And that's where how flash your footwork and create your distancing and range, eventually going to catch up with you. But that's not the case in MMA. They can come in close. If they come in too close, you can come back and shoot and then take them down. But you don't have that in kickboxing. So yeah, I do agree with Larry in terms of having a good boxing skills. But if you see some of the pattern that some of the elite fighters in MMA, first they're going to find their range to their jab, and then they find their range of low kicks, and then everything else happens behind it, including takedown and other, either striking or wrestling techniques.
Yeah, Lolo, and just quickly, the guys from CKB also using a lot of feinting. I noticed like a lot more than probably any other of the gyms. Can you like talk about the importance of that, of feinting and setting other shots up?
Yeah, I mean, feinting, of course, in most cases, look at feinting. There are different. You can get 3 different setups from feinting. One is that you're gonna get your opponent guessing all the time, and 2, you can sell a very good quality feint if you're in a tight corner to buy yourself time to get out, because it's not just offensive stuff. And then of course, once you rattle your opponent or give them guessing, then you can feint and what I call feint to gain momentum and distance. So you feint and they move back and you move forward. Now you can't at distancing, you're in control of it. And if they move back, yes. If they don't, then you smack them. Okay, so and you see Israel Adesanya does it a lot. You feint and you move back, Another time you feint and you shift and then you guard the distance and then he strikes from there because he's already in range. So, but that and anybody can practice feinting. It doesn't have to be just big guys. It's just to have that understanding that feinting is just as important as striking. It's part of your arsenal. Because the old days, people used to think that feinting, it's just something that, if in trouble, hey, feint, you're going to run in the right hand, Feinting, you have to practice. It's not something that the coach or corner calls out and then you expect you to do it. You have to put as much time in your feinting as you do into your other arsenal and strikes in your game. So, yeah, it's anybody can do it.
Thanks, Lolo. Hey, Larry, just wanted to talk a little bit about building a style, how people can build a style. Obviously, people need to build their base, and then where possible, kind of, I guess, maximize their personal attributes or something into building a style. Can you comment on that at all?
Yeah, look, you could take the argument and say, you need to have everything and you need to be able to adapt to different fighters. But, if you do have a strong style, and to me, a style is maybe like you base your style on good, strong defense, and solid low kicks or double shots. That's your style. It's not a problem having that because, the people that stick to their style and are able to keep using it, they're the guys that have more success than people that have to keep changing because it's not working. In other words, their style has a lot of holes in it. So, again, you would build someone's style along their strengths. I look at how many wrestlers went into early UFCs and had incredible success, fake shots, takedowns, ground and pound, and win fights. And then they fought some guys, knocked them out, and said, this is great. I can knock people out with my hands. And they try and stand up with guys and get knocked out themselves. Why would you change your style? You know what I mean? So for me, build a style based on their strengths, and then obviously do a lot of work on any weaknesses that are there, and it's not a drama for a fighter to have a style, whether it be a style based on takedowns or angling with punches and whatever, striking style, and then it's about him trying to keep his style and the other person having to try and fight his fight, as they say. But certain people have a style, definitely. And it could be a rushing style, it could be a stalking style. But as long as they stick with it, I think Khabib, like we said, like Lolo picked it right. You knew what Khabib was going to do, what his style was. Adesanya style. So the top guys, you don't see them chopping and changing very much. So
that's true, Larry.
Build the style on their strengths. And keep working on their weaknesses. You don't need to change that style once you've built it.
That's it. Thanks, Larry. Any comments on building a style, Lolo?
It's style. It just reminds me of the old Bruce Lee movie. Enter the Dragon. This guy asked, "What's your style?" And Bruce Lee said, "The art of fighting, fair fighting." And I still remember that. But yeah, it's. I actually don't try to build any style. To be honest, I just want to make sure that they do the little things right. Understanding the distancing, understanding the punching range and the option of strikes they need to throw at the right time and the right option. And I try and work with that, rather than get yourself on a strict style that can become predictable when other people studying your video when you fight, So, of course, some will be always going to be a better striker than his wrestling, or better wrestling than his fighting style, or whatever, But for me, it's I don't want for me to sound like a smart ass philosophical about it, but I never really look at things as style. It's just like if they can sort of pick this little box off, keep your hands up, keep your correct distance. If he's rushing too fast, you know, throw an elbow or, you know, or grapple or whatever that is. So if I can get those little things right, then I'm done, because I don't want it to be, and then the next fight or the next few weeks, a few months to come, and we're going to add on more arsenal into his game. You know, so, I hope I didn't come across like a badass, but you know, that's my opinion. You know,
No,
but yeah.
No, can I just throw something back there? Because yeah, like I actually, now that I think about what I just said, Lolo's hit the nail on the head. I think it goes back to that old thing. What's the difference between style and system? And style is something that's really distinctive that you see, oh, that's so and so. But the system, which is what Lolo's talking about, as long as your systems, or how we move in the ring or the cage, how we cut off the cage, how we react to rushing attacks. If you've got a system, that never changes. Those basics, those basic principles like level changes, feints. If you keep your system happening, then that's more importantly. There are people that have a certain style about them, like McGregor fights. That's his style, but he does have quite a big range, but he's got good principles. So and stuff like that. Adesanya, he does have that little bit of that style of his, but it's his principles and his the system that he uses that works for him. So like I said, style identifies you. Like people can see kind of your style, but I don't think only good coaches and people that really understand what your system is. How you fight in the ring, the way you initiate attacks, the way you defend. That's another thing. That's not style. That's system.
Yeah. And one thing that kind of jumps to my mind is, and what you're kind of alluding to a little bit, is the base of the system is the first sort of part. And then from there, some people develop a little bit that style, right? Like you look at someone like Prince Nassim in his early fights, he actually looked very orthodox, man. He was a very orthodox type of fighter. He did everything correctly, hands up and everything. And then as he's understood all those different elements that Lolo was talking about, from there, he's developed into his own personal style a little bit, using his own attributes, things that he likes to do. And then after learning that base, right?
Yeah. I think that's what Adesanya made his name the Soundbender, because he in his mind, he believed, and he did, that he's going to bend anybody's out that come up against him. So, yeah.
That's it, guys. And on the talking about, for Lolo especially, talking about building a good stand-up fighter, what sort of time frames? I know it's a really general question, but what sort of time frame would someone expect to put in to be able to be like a professional level fighter, whether it's MMA or stand-up fighting?
For me? Okay, yeah. Well, it's very. I mean, I think Larry said it before. It depends on how quick they pick it up, or how talented they are. A lot of people that I was looking forward to, this guy's going to be champion. He absorbed the instructions to the max, and then you're all looking forward to it, and then you don't see him again after 3 months later. And then other guys to take them a lot longer, but they keep practicing, and they become a master at it, or become very good at it. So it's hard, but in average, when I take the guys into the fighters class, from when they're ready to come in, when they're in the general class, and then from the general class into the fighters class, some of those guys, they're be between the average, even 2 months to 6 months before they had their first hours fight. And at the beginning, back in the old gym, we had about 85% winning, results from our first fighters hop in the ring and fight. So yeah, for me, it's about that. Average about 4 months. Yeah.
And then to step into
their very first fight.
And then to get into the pro ranks, how much longer to jump into the pro sort of level do you think?
Well, the pro ranks, it's some of those guys that been at the gym less than a year, they are very good. They're probably more efficient and a lot tidier than a lot of professional fighters. But then professional fighting is not about technique. It's about other things that Larry was talking about before. They got to have the determination. You got to have the perseverance. They got to have the patience. They got to have the mindset to stay calm under pressure. And that's the quality that the professional fighters have, because they need to. Because either they got to fight on 5 rounds, 5 minutes, or in boxing they fight 3 minutes, 12 rounds in 3 minutes. So it's the technique and how they look and their talent alone is not enough. They have to develop the maturity and experience of sparring and have more fights, just to improve. Of course, some can. I had one guy, who never had amateur fights, and half the one corporate fight, he had a professional fight boxing, and then he won 9 fights in a row, most of them by knockout, and then become a New Zealand champion and Australian champion. And but it's just one off. I'm not talking about guys like him. I'm talking about average guys who come into the gym. They would need a lot more training, more experience, and that you're going to see their level of patience and temperament. There's a lot of things you look for. I look for anyway. Before I actually get someone to become professional.
Yep. And Larry, looking at the grappling wrestling side particularly, I know it's a general question, but timeframes for learning a good base of grappling wrestling in terms of MMA?
Minimum 2 years. Unfortunately, it's time on the mat. It just takes a lot because there's so much more to it. So, and people, it's one of the most uncomfortable places to be is underneath someone. It's very hard. So, I reckon at least 2 years of decent grappling and training. I mean, I just look at people, the fastest kind of guys like, what's his name? BJ Penn, won a world title, got a black belt within record time, 3 years or something. I can't remember, which is unusual. But, the average person doing, say, wrestling or kind of grappling, and to be able to wrestle competitively or grapple at, say, what would be a BJJ blue belt level, which would be your minimum, is about 2 years.
Yep. Cool. Hey, we're sort of running out of time, so I've got one or two more questions. Talking about strength and conditioning, and rest and recovery, all these things are, in the social media, all the fighters now, it's a big kind of trend. How much influence does that have to someone's ability to win, do you think? And then, does it really make a big difference, or is it like a small percentage difference? And how much do you guys focus on strength and conditioning, rest and recovery, et cetera, now with your fighters?
The old days, we used to believe that just hard training is enough, but the games have evolved. The games has evolved. Everybody's getting better. Yes, I advise. I actually encourage my fighters to do 2 to 3 really intense strength and conditioning about 3 times a week, 2 or 3 times a week, and then as long as they don't miss out the training, it's like looking at MMA fighter where you should be focused more on wrestling or stand up. It's all part of it. They have to have their balance, and they need to have their strength conditioning as part of the routine.
Larry, thoughts on strength and conditioning, rest and recovery, etc.?
Yeah, look, strength and conditioning is an investment. The science behind strength and conditioning is you just don't get 1 year, you don't get massive benefits. You go through cycles. And when you're a younger person, you build up a certain percentage, and then you do another cycle, it gets stronger. And strength and conditioning could take 3 to 4 years to build someone up to their maximum potential. It doesn't, there's no strength and conditioning program to get someone that's never done anything and get them to peak in 1 year. It doesn't work that way. As far as recovery in that, it's like comparing a V-dub to a Ferrari. You fine tune that Ferrari a lot more than you do the V-dub. So your recovery and your periodization, your planning for, say, an Whitaker or Adesanya, those guys, is far more intricate and more precise than it is for someone just fighting at an amateur level. Like, we can advise those guys, have early nights, get off the grog, make sure you sleep properly, and give them hints on what recovery tools they can use, whether it be contrast showers, massage and stuff like that. But, as we get to those better fighters, and we have to be, as coaches, we definitely have to look at an entire integrated plan. It's okay, which days are you training with me? Which days are you doing strength and conditioning? What are you doing for recovery? When are you stretching? When are you having a massage? When are you just having a good meal? Because remember, meals are the basis for a training session. So, we look at that recovery. I tell people, okay, well, on your weight sessions, it's a different meal plan to what it is on your longer training sessions where you're doing more endurance work as opposed to strength work and stuff like that. So, because I've worked with some pretty high level fighters and, with football teams and that, I'm probably a little bit more experienced with that than a lot of other people, but only because I've been fortunate enough to work with those people.
And do you think it makes a massive difference, the strength and conditioning type programs, especially just thinking about strength? Does?
Absolutely. Yep. Big time.
Cool. Yeah. All right, gents, I've kind of nearly run out of time, so I got one just sort of fun question at the end. Just wanted to know from both of you, if you could piece together some attributes of current or previous fighters to make an ultimate fighter, who would you piece together? Maybe start with Lolo.
Oh, well, if I had to look at the most natural talent guys now and like the UFC, guys I would love to have the right. I'm just going back to what about the conditioning. Larry mentioned about science and technology and stuff here. You have to have the right coach to prepare your fighters for strength conditioning. One guy that I can't help looking at him, that if this guy was in top shape, and it's Lewis. Yeah, Lewis. I mean, the guy, he does amazing stuff. He's so explosive with jumping knee and jumping kick, and it's so he's got a very decisive speed and power and flexibility. So, man, if that guy had the right nutritionist and the right conditioning, his coaching is good. What an athlete he would be. You know what I mean? It's probably one of the most explosive talent that heavyweight. Of course, I see guys in Nanu and all this, all naturally and good, but you see them in good shape, and when I can't help look at, when I look at guys like Lewis, anyway, that I thought.
Larry, any key guys you'd piece together if you could make an ultimate fighter?
What, to past and present?
Yeah, past and present.
I mean, I reckon two guys that, because I know that they've done it through only hard work, they weren't naturally talented. You look at Volkanovski, definitely, and George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre, he just trained better. He just trained more scientific. He was a warrior, and you couldn't say that he was, he was a Kyokushin guy, but he just did the hard work. He was one of those guys that maybe had some talent, but he got there through hard work. And I think Alex Volkanovski is the same thing as well, from what I know of him. Stuff like that.
Yeah, the interesting thing with George St. Pierre is he just, he worked on everything, right? He became elite at wrestling. he was doing gymnastics. He's obviously been training with some of the best, John Danaher and BJJ. Striking's excellent. He's really worked on it to get to that level.
Gym had some awesome coaches, yeah. And I think that's where, if I'm not wrong, I think Whitaker went there. That's where he made a big leap when he went to TriStar as well. So.
All right, guys. So we've got to the end of around an hour, and I just wanted to quickly, one more comment, just get your guys' final advice for people that are looking at or people that are already training and want to be an elite fighter, whether it be stand-up or whether it be MMA. Any final advice from you two guys?
Yeah, don't look at unfortunately, I think people might look at a McGregor and the swagger and that, and they haven't realized how many hours he actually spent in the gym. It's about time, and I think Lolo's, we've used every word but sacrifice. If you want to be a fighter, you have to sacrifice. You got to sacrifice personal time, family time. You've got to be selfish about, yourself in many ways, but you got to make a lot of sacrifices. Good words. Lolo, your thoughts?
Larry summed it up, bro. He summed it up beautifully. Yeah, I agree with him. I got nothing better to say. That was it.
Perfect. All right, guys. Once again, I'd like to really thank you. It's been my pleasure to talk again with two masters of the fight game. Probably a little bit short to really draw enough knowledge out of you guys, but I hope we could make this a bit more regular. Maybe in 6 months or a year, we can catch up again and have another chat. But thank you so much for your time, Lolo and Larry. Oh, Toby, pleasure. Lolo, lovely seeing you again. Maybe one day we're allowed to travel, be able to get there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Fair enough.
All right, gents.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Toby.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, of course. Give us a notice and we'll do it again. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, buddy. Take
Thanks,
care, Toby.